Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome again to the poem of the day for today, Monday, September 1st, 2025. Happy Labor Day to everyone, if even including and especially if you are celebrating in the United States today. I really hope that you are able to take some time today to yourself for additional rest and restoration and relaxation. And I hope that you have some time to also reflect on your work, not in a way of thinking about those toxic things at the office that might weigh our spirits down, that is the exact opposite of what we should be thinking about today, but rather to think about yourself and your relationship to what you do for a third of your 24 hours in a day, probably half of your waking time. And hopefully, even if you're in a job that you despise, hopefully you're able to see value in that goes beyond the material things that you produce, and perhaps it offers you some sort of personal enrichment or personal discipline or even spiritual nourishment in some small way, often despite what it is you might be doing actually for your job. If you're lucky, like I am, and I know that I'm in rare company with this, you have a job that's more to you like a vocation than it is an actual job. And while these days remain very important and very welcome, I'm not ever going to complain about a day off. It's easier for us in those situations to reflect on the work and the way that we feel the value of our work, even if it can be frustrating and challenging at times. And I also just want to acknowledge that some people might not have the luxury of having work. A lot of people are out of work right now, and I think that we should keep those people in mind today. People who are out of work for medical reasons, or who simply can't find work, or who are underemployed. I'd like to keep those people in the front of our minds and to wish good things for them as well. And also to people who, might not be able to take today as a restful day for a variety of different reasons. Perhaps there's a loved one who needs their care and attention, or perhaps too many things have piled up in the house that they need to do, chores or bills or things like that, and that they might not be able to take today as truly a day of rest. I know a lot of my neighbors are cutting their grass today, which for me can be a, you know, um, woeful task, but for some people they find a lot of solace doing that. It's kind of repetitious and meditative. It's also very beautiful here, and so I've seen a lot of people outside walking their dog, just sitting. I intend later, I do have some things that I would like to check off the list against the spirit of the restful day, but I do intend to spend some time outside walking and reading, which I think is two ways for me that are nourishing and restorative to spend days like this. So the poem today has a pretty radical turn from the horrors of the rhyme of the ancient mariner. The poem today is by Sara Teasdale, who lived from 1884 to 1993, and I'm told that she had pneumonia and overdosed on barbiturates, and that was how she died. And it's not necessarily clear whether that was an intentional overdose or a accidental one, but her life was cut short as a result of that, and as a result of her illness. But her poem that we're going to read today doesn't really speak to any of that. It doesn't really indicate a person in trouble at all. It indicates a person who reaches the state that I was wishing and hoping for everyone for today. So this poem is from 1915. It's called Peace by Sara Teasdale. Peace flows into me as the tide to the pool by the shore. It is mine forevermore. It ebbs not back like the sea. I am the pool of blue that worships the vivid sky. My hopes were heaven high. They are fulfilled in you. I am the pool of gold when the sunset burns and dies. You are my deepening skies. Give me your stars to hold. So Teasdale's poem here, excuse me, is just 12 lines long. It's 4 lines per each of its 3 stanzas. And each of the stanzas is an embraced quatrain. And what I mean by that is it follows A, B, B, A, C, D, D, C, E, F, F, E rhyme scheme. So the first and the fourth lines rhyme, and then the second and the third within the poem, within the quatrain rhyme. And I always liked the idea of an embraced quatrain, of having the first and fourth rhyme with one another, and then the second and third rhyme with one another, because it feels to me like a hug, or even like a hug inside a hug, like a family, family group hug is happening there. And I always found those embraced quatrains, whether that's the intention of the writer to have a nice kind of comforting, cozy unit aspect to it. And I think that that's very applicable to what Teasdale's writing about in this poem. This poem is immediately transformed by simile and by metaphor, and in a sense by, I'm sure there's a word for this, it's not coming to me, but sort of a reverse personification. Instead of saying the sea is a person, the person becomes the sea, which is performed language-wise through simile and metaphor, but I wonder if there's not a more precise word for it. And the occasion of the poem, because the first line says peace flows into me, we can imagine that the occasion of this poem is almost the equivalent of taking a snapshot. I see a lot of people posting things online, or even sharing things by text, of these absolutely beautiful, serene moments in nature. And the impulse to capture that immediately comes from this sense that it's rare and it's fleeting and it popped up out of nowhere. And so there's a sense and a desire to preserve it. And I think that's the occasion of this poem, is that the speaker has this moment of peace having flowed into her. And because it's that first line, you can almost get the sense that she's scribbling this down really quickly. And then we get our first our first simile there, as the tide to the pool by the shore. I also really like in that line the 2 prepositional phrases there that I feel like they almost sort of ripple to the end of the line. As the tide to the pool by the shore. I think it gives it a nice rolling quality. It is mine forevermore. So in the third line, she's claiming that this piece, she's going to hold on to it, that it's not a fleeting moment like we just discussed in terms of taking pictures, but that it's something that will be with her forever. And the first line talked about a flowing, but as we know, waves flow in and then they ebb, right? They pull back. But she says here, it ebbs not back like the sea. Since it doesn't ebb back, since it's not this temporary moment, the second quatrain transforms the speaker by metaphor into a pool. I am the pool of blue that worships the vivid sky. And what's really nice about this is she seems to suggest that humans have to become nature, even though we are nature or part of nature, but humans have to become nature in order to achieve the stillness of something like water. Water moves and it flows, but it always returns back to a state of stillness. And it looks up at and reflects the sky, which I think is a really beautiful image, not just of something we've seen, that the stars reflected in water in the midnight sky, but also this idea that like an embrace, nature kind of echoes or reflects itself back and forth. If you wanted to take a religious image here, I think you could. It's not within the explicit content of the poem, but I could see believers seeing themselves as pools sort of reflecting the will and the grace and the joy of the Creator, if someone wanted to take that. I also think because of the line in here, they are fulfilled in you, again, could speak to a person speaking to their God. I think it also could speak to a person speaking to their beloved, finding someone who you had these heaven high hopes, you had this impossible kind of platonic ideal of somebody that you wanted to meet and be with, and then you have all of those wishes fulfilled when you finally are with your partner. The reading that I actually like the best, though, is still about solitude, and that they are fulfilled in you as the speaker speaking to herself. That her fulfillment doesn't come from a sense of divine or celestial purpose. It doesn't come from needing love at that moment from another person. It comes instead from the kind of transcendental feeling of being atoms shared by water, shared by stars, shared by the trees. And her stillness remains. In the final quatrain, she describes being now a pool of gold instead of a pool of blue. And when the sunset burns and dies, you are my deepening skies. Give me your stars to hold. So there's a process that the rest of the world around her is moving. Or I think it's interesting that she describes the sunset burning out and dying. Sunsets are so beautiful. A lot of people will go out of their way to, time their evening so that they can watch it. And I don't think a lot of us think of them necessarily as deaths, but there is this sense of, like we spoke at the beginning, a blink and you miss it. That time is not in this case dictated by the human activities and the human schedules, but that if we want to glimpse this, we have to give ourselves over to the natural processes that are outside of our control. And so in the end, then, she's asking, give me your stars to hold. So she is now, at least at the end of this poem, still forevermore in this situation of peace, being the pool. It's a small, but it's a very rich and lovely poem. Moving, I think, from the somewhat fragile connections that similes suggest, that one thing is like another, but not exactly. It's a kind of a suggestion. They might maybe brush up against one another. To then in the second and third stanzas, completely becoming metaphor, that I am these things, which then suggests an equality, even a merging or a loss of individual identity that comes from being separate. And I think the reason I wanted to read this poem was, other than describing peace, I think it describes the tremendous gifts and experience we can have from rest. And I hope that the more fulfilling moments described in this poem are things that you're able to experience for yourself today, if you're able to take some time for some rest and to clear your mind from the busyness of the tasks that lie ahead tomorrow, or the things that perhaps you wanted to get to today that you weren't able to. So please have a restful and hopefully a peaceful day, and enjoy your time. Take some time, be restored, and may peace be with you all.